Hi, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining us in another of these calls and interviews for the Barbados SEO. Today, we've got Cindy Krum with us. She's got a really, really interesting talk at the conference, and we're going to use this opportunity to talk to her about her career, her talk in Barbados. So welcome. Thank you for joining us, Cindy.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So I'm going to start with something really, really basic, and this is the way I start with everybody else. How did you get started in SEO?
Well, so it was all by accident, which I think is really common. But I was, when I graduated from school, I had a degree in marketing and a degree in art. And so I ended up just building web pages, but they didn't necessarily rank. So I introduced this product at the website shop I was working at to help them rank. And so it was a separate thing, and the owner of the company loved it because I was introducing new things that they could sell. And then we got enough interest in it that I kind of switched from building websites to just doing that. And then I moved on to another company that had even bigger clients. And that's when I got into mobile SEO, was the second time around.
Were things very different when you started from today for people who are starting today?
Yes, absolutely. So I started in about 2003, which is not the absolute beginning, but it's close. And in the early days of SEO, a lot of people did both SEO and SEM, or SEO and PPC. The same person would do all of the digital marketing. And so there were strategies that were really coordinated. Now, usually it's different groups, different departments, and there's just so much more to it. In 2003, it was a lot more about just getting links, and you could get away with a lot more.
Yeah. And these days, I think the rules are a bit more set than they used to be.
Well, yes, because they're, over time, people who are trying to trick the algorithm have kind of thought up and tried all of the different things and said, yes, this works, or no, this doesn't, or this works in this case, but not that case. So I think in the early days, it was all still testing and trying to be super clever. And now it's less about being clever, finding ways to trick the search engines, and more about being clever in finding strategies that will actually resonate with users and keep their attention and actually sell whatever it is you're trying to sell or make the money.
Yeah, a little bit related to what we were talking about now. It's what would you say was the biggest challenge for you back then, and what's the biggest challenge in SEO these days?
I think it's, for me, because I work with really big companies, but big companies don't make changes very easily. So the biggest hurdle for me has always been convincing companies with budgets to do the right thing in Google's eyes, rather than just pay for traffic or pay for links or take a shortcut. So it's kind of like, the way I explain it is, when you think about health, you can crash diet and take diet pills, or you can live a healthy lifestyle. And I feel like what I'm selling is a healthy lifestyle, and sometimes that's a little bit harder because there's more work involved. So it ends up being more sustainable in the long run, but it doesn't always get you the quick results right away.
I know what you mean by trying to convince people to do it the right way. Why do you think even today, with all the knowledge that companies have and people who work in SEO have, why do you think some people are still, and some companies are still reluctant to, take, the long road approach and, do things and understanding that SEO is not a quick win?
Yeah. Well, I think everyone wants a shortcut if they feel like there's no risk. And I think what gets talked about a lot is the reward side of that equation rather than the risk side. So the way I address it, especially when I'm working with these big companies, is hey, yes, that tricky thing could work for a little while, but if we get banned or if we get penalties, we are not nimble enough to address those in a quick way, where it wouldn't have a major impact on the bottom line. So the risks just don't get enough attention. And I think that's what you have to counteract it with, is like, yes, there might be a big reward, but there's also a big risk. And especially with huge enterprise or international or very complex SEO projects, fixing things that have gone wrong will take much, much longer than doing it right the first time.
Yeah. One of the things that I have seen, especially with big companies, is that sometimes, especially when, recessions come and like there are crises, they will want to like switch off SEO efforts because they think that this is not going to harm the strategy. What would you say to someone thinking about doing something like that?
Yeah, I mean, when there's a shortage of money, SEO does seem to get on the cutting block before PPC because it's less of a guarantee. When you're paying for ads, it's a transactional thing. You pay for this, you get this, and it's all known. When you're doing SEO, it's while it can have a positive long-term impact, it's still a guess. It's an educated guess. It's a strategic guess. Like most marketing is kind of a guess.
Yeah.
Is this going to resonate with users or not? But paying for ads, you're at least getting something. Even if your ad is bad, your landing page is bad, you'll get some traffic, versus if you take the wrong SEO strategy and you're doing kind of something that's not moving the needle, it takes a while to figure that out and adjust course. And so people just feel like there's not enough budget. So addressing it with clients, it can be a tough sell, but I say, like when there's a shortage of money, that's actually the time to invest, because you can get people to work on SEO projects, writers to work on SEO projects at better prices usually. And there's more people willing to do the hard work to get their paycheck. And so that'll put you ahead, when the economy comes back or when the recession is over.
Yeah. Like you've been mentioning that you usually work with like big clients. What's your favorite thing about working in like big accounts and for big sites?
Well, so I like working on, sometimes I don't like working on big sites. That's the truth. But I like the additional layer of strategy where we have to work with sometimes multiple platforms or multiple groups that have to kind of collaborate and work together. So I like being brought into companies where people are kind of siloed and the dev team isn't talking to the paid team and they're not talking to no one's talking to SEO, and kind of bringing these things together and saying, we have information here, we have projects here, let's coordinate these things, and use SEO as kind of the glue that brings all of these things together. Even social, can be a huge help for SEO, driving awareness, driving natural organic links. So I think SEO has the opportunity to come in and be very strategic, as long as they're willing to see the bigger picture, that not every decision in a company is based on what's good for SEO. So you have to kind of take your thinking to the next level and think not just what's good for SEO, but what's good for SEO and good for the company at large, and all of these different teams and their KPIs, and trying to sell that internally to make everyone feel like they have a vested interest in doing the right thing for SEO.
You've been working in SEO for like around like 20 years, let's say, and you're one of the leading women in the industry. Has the situations changed for women like a lot? Were there like less women when you started? Are there more now? Or is there just more visibility?
I would say it's absolutely changed, especially in terms of visibility. I think there are more women on stages, especially in US and UK kinds of conferences. But actually, recently I went and did a conference in Poland, and there definitely weren't as many female speakers. And there was one point where I was hanging out with a bunch of people from the conference, and I was the one woman with 16 or 17 other men at this table or whatever. So the balance has shifted definitely in the US and the UK, where it's more even, but it still can be hard to find women, and especially where SEO is less aggressive or less prevalent, then you find even fewer women. Or when SEO is kind of a new thing, it seems to be men that are entering the industry first. That was just an observation. Maybe it's not true, but I think that it probably is. So yeah, I was one of the early women, and there weren't as many as there are now. And still, I hear conference directors saying that there's a shortage of technical women, that you'll have a lot of women who want to talk about content and content strategy, writing and landing pages, but don't want to talk about technical issues. And so I think that my aptitude for technical SEO and international SEO and really complex SEO, that's the other thing that's helped along the way, is being a little bit different from other women in the industry.
Yeah. So in all these years you've been working and, presenting and going to all these conferences, can you name like one moment in your career that you're the most proud of?
Well, I guess I can come up with a couple, but not just one. I was really excited the first time I got to speak at MozCon, which was in front of like a stage with like thousands of people in the audience. And I won an award at a really elite conference for one of the top talks. And then just over the course of my career, I've been able to predict some of the major things that Google has done. And so every time that happens and something I've said is going to happens, I feel super vindicated and happy. So sorry I couldn't come up with one, but that's like kind of three.
So which like, now that you talk about predicting where Google is going to go, where do you think Google is going to go now? Like, what are they going to do?
People laugh at me and have on this one, but I'll say it until it happens. I do think that Google has invested super heavily in voice and conversational search. And I think that what we're seeing coming out of Google I/O this year and all of the AI stuff that they're showing, they always include a chat with the next kind of question prompted. And that's absolutely a good fit for a voice query, an assistant query, even like Android Auto. They don't want you typing, so you have to do voice. So I think that voice is Google's entry into what's called the Internet of Things, when we're able to turn lights on and off or change the temperature in a house all over the internet. I think Google wants to be a part of that, even though it's not a informational query per se, if you're saying turn the lights on or turn the lights off, but there's an implied informational query in a lot of it, like if the lights are on, find out and turn them off, and so people are used to thinking of search as like searching the world's information, but sometimes it might just be searching your house's information and adjusting it over the internet, or doing searches that are much more contextual, like a search you might do from your car while you're driving. That's a compound query where it's like, is McDonald's still open? And if it is there one within 5 miles of me, or something like that? Is there one within a minute drive?
That's really interesting. You were mentioning also like AI. How do you think AI is going to change the industry? Because there's a lot of talk these days about that.
Yeah, and I think that for now, a lot of the strategies are kind of in a holding pattern as Google figures out how it's going to leverage AI and where. But I think for the most part, we're going to start to need to know more about things that are not considered traditional organic rankings. So I think that it's going to, the addition of AI into search results is going to not change what we do a lot day to day, at least for now, because Google's still trying to figure out what they're doing, I think. But in the long run, I think it's going to be critical for SEOs to know what is in the AI ranking and which queries it's coming in for, because if you were ranking number one on a query that drives, half of your traffic to your site, and now all of a sudden there's an AI box pushing it down and it's got pictures and stars and chat and all this interactivity, they're not going to count that as a position one. They're just going to put it in and it pushes position one way down, and you're going to lose a lot of traffic and clicks. And so I think that as an industry, SEOs kind of need to be honest and need to be looking at when is the AI coming in and how is it impact going to be a huge click thief, as have many of the things that Google has introduced, knowledge graph, and people also ask. All of that stuff is a richer result than a blue link. And so even if it's below your ranking, if people feel like they can get the answer without clicking through to a website and having to read the website, they will.
I know, that's really interesting. Yeah. In your career, like, who would you say have been the people that have inspired the most?
Oh gosh. He's less in the industry now, but for a long time, I really looked up to Rand Fishkin and what he was doing, and his ability to synthesize what's going on and tell in a very memorable way stories about SEO and what's working and what's not. So he's always been an inspiration. And then let's see, Matt Cutts as well, I think had a really hard job. I know that's showing my age, that I've been in the industry for that long, but those two guys were just always very good at balancing the truth of what they're seeing in SEO, what they're seeing work and not work, with what is best for companies. And in Matt Cutts' case, to some degree what's best for the search engine. But really, I think he did a huge service, and it speaks to the complexity of SEO now. Had a replacement because there's too much going on in the algorithm and too many nuances for one person to really be able to represent Google as well as Matt did. It's just too complex now.
Yeah.
And it's changing so fast. I think what people failed to notice about SEO, which I do feel like I kind of pointed out very early, is that the switch from traditional indexing to mobile first indexing wasn't really a switch about crawlers per se. It was a switch about indexing and how Google's organized its brain, basically its index. And the crawler was kind of a less significant change in many ways. What was really significant is Google went from organizing its index around URLs first to organize its index around entities first, and understanding entities and linked concepts as a means of understanding the web, instead of just understanding URLs and links and architecture hierarchy. Now they really understand things in what they call the topic layer. They understand the connection between these topics and what websites speak to those topics and which ones don't. And what that's done is it's allowed them to, in some ways, understand and organize their index, not one language at a time, but kind of with a learning model that includes all languages based on entities. And that makes their learning much faster. And what that's done for us, and every SEO knows this, is it's sped up the iteration that Google is able to do when they launch algorithmic updates. So now we're seeing algorithmic updates launch, as more than 2 a month sometimes, where it used to be 2 or 3 a year maximum. And so this is, I think it's because of the larger data set with more capacity to learn when you organize things based on entities rather than languages and links. And that's not going to go away. That is a feature, not a bug. They want to be able to iterate quickly.
Yeah, it makes sense. And then, like, to wrap this up, like this small section talking about SEO and your career, what do you think is the most important quality or skill that anyone working in SEO needs to have?
It's a great question. So one of the books that I sometimes require new employees or new contractors who are working with me to read is by Angela Duckworth or Amanda Duckworth. I can't remember her first name, but it's called Grit. It's about how to be gritty. And the idea of grit is how to keep trying at something and not losing enthusiasm when it doesn't work. So it's kind of like how to be resilient and how to adapt on the fly. And these are all qualities, curiosity, being able to adapt, being able to adjust course, all without feeling defeated when the first or the second thing you try doesn't work. I think that is really what it takes. And I do recommend that book for anyone in SEO. And I also, if you're running an agency, I recommend recommending it to new hires, because it what sets people apart in terms of success in this industry, I think, is that the grit, the adaptability, and the kind of innate enthusiasm for trying new things rather than just kind of giving up and feeling defeated.
No, it's really interesting. It sounds really good. I'm gonna add it to my to-read list. Your talk at Barbados SEO is titled "Word to Your Mom: Managing the Future of SEO with Keywords." Without spoiling it too much, what will people hear about in your talk?
Yeah, so Mom is one of Google's most recent additions to their their technology. And what it is it stands for multitask unified model, which basically they haven't done a lot of decoding on that, but it seems to be Google's way of joining different kinds of information and queries together into what they call a journey. So we're not sure if the multitask aspect of it is modifying queries or understanding queries in two different ways, or taking in queries that are like text and images, or giving back responses that are text and images. But at the same time, around about the same time that they started talking about Mum, they also started talking about Google multi-search, which was an advancement that lets you search things without a keyword. So at about the same time that Google launched or started talking about Google Mum, they also started talking about Google multi-search, which is, I think, a revolutionary way of searching. For most SEOs, it kind of blows their mind because the search doesn't necessarily involve your target keywords. So the example that Google gives is if you submit a picture of a woman wearing a dress and the dress happens to be orange, you can submit that picture as a query, but modify it and say, picture, but in green. And in green is the only text that you're submitting. So it's the only textual query, but you're also submitting the image. And so Google will start looking for dresses that look like that, but are green. And so, that's going to pose a lot of fun challenges for us as SEOs because the keyword isn't there. The other great example is taking a picture of like a bike, like a piece or a part on a bike, and submitting the search how to fix. again, like that, the text query doesn't give Google enough to surface information, but with the image it might. And that's super useful for people like who you don't know what to search for. Like, I don't know what this part on the bike is called, but I know I need to, it's broken and I need to fix it. That's actually a real world like thing I can see happening to me pretty regularly.
Yeah.
So I think that the multi-search maybe or is likely related, at least to some degree, with mum. But I do think we're also seeing mum play out in the AI kinds of search results, because when you think about a journey, which is Google's kind of buzzword that's associated with mum maps out different journeys that might be associated with an entity. So with their other big example is Mount Fuji. If you search for Mount Fuji, maybe you care about Mount Fuji's historical eruptions and you're writing a research paper, or maybe you're going to hike Mount Fuji. And those are two very different journeys. And so a lot of what we're seeing in search results are those, filters. And I think that what Google is doing is using those filters to understand the different journeys associated with an entity. So if I were to search for Mount Fuji, you might get some very Mount Fuji specific filters that are like, are you hiking it? Are you looking at the weather? Are you researching it?
If it's volcanic activity or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's using those filters to kind of organize and map out and watch, what do people do next if they're hiking it? What do people do next if they're doing a research paper? So that it can suggest those next behaviors in the AI chatbot feature.
Okay, no, that sounds really cool. What are you expecting from Barbados SEO? Is it going to be your first time in the country?
The pictures of historical events have looked amazing, and it just looks like a beautiful place to be. So I'm excited.
Yeah. Have you had a chance to have a look at the rest of the lineup?
Some of it. I know a lot of people I really respect are going to be there, so I'm always excited to hang out with those guys and talk shop. And of course, I think it's going to attract a really great group of attendees as well. So getting to meet new people is always fun too.
One of the things that I ask all the speakers, and it's that, how would you convince someone to go to Barbados SEO? Because it's not really close and it's a flight and it's not the cheapest destination to go to. So how would you convince someone to actually take a chance and attend to it?
Well, so I've found this to be true in my life, that when I learn something, it stays in my brain better if it's associated with a lot of good memories. And so, for instance, things that I learned in school in group projects where I had a lot of fun working with the group, those lessons stick and seem to surface in my brain more easily. So if you're trying to sell it to your boss, trying to convince a boss to send you, you can maybe try and say that and say, I think that it's going to be some of the best speakers in the world. And I think it's really going to be memorable. So I'll learn a lot and I'll have a lot of fun. And it's like kind of a reward for hard work. Brainstorm and have fascinating conversations with some of the best SEOs in the world. That's my reward for the hard work. So maybe sell it like that to your bosses. Yeah.
I look very much forward to seeing you there, and thank you so much for taking the time for having a quick casual chat with me and the rest of the people who are working behind the scenes at Barbados SEO.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure.